So today's daf is daf Kuf Mem Beis in Bava Bas, which we learned from Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and the Surah Matzar Shivya. Yesterday, we discussed the issue. We're going to continue today with Mezakal Uber. Can you acquire something for an embryo, for an unborn child? And we said we paskin like Rav Huna. We're going to come out later on. Ryopan says that a Uber, you cannot acquire something for him, but there are exceptions. We said in a Mishnah could be a shchemira, could maybe because a special exemption for a shchemira who's dying and we don't want to upset him, so he could be mezaka maybe for an uber. And we're going to see another case in our Mishnah also. Our Mishnah said he was mezaka for himself, for his own child. Maybe for your own child it's different. We'll see. But anyway, we had this machlokes, and at the top of the page, Rav Huna said, that we have this machlokes that can you acquire something for an embryo? And Rav Huna said that even you can't acquire it for him, even said that he should acquire it after he's born. Rav Nachman, the third line on the page, Rav Nachman says you can't be mezaka, you can't acquire something, give something, even by a third person, acquire it for the embryo. You can't acquire it, but like Shatel Kana. But Rav Nachman says, but when he's born, he will acquire it. You can give it to him now so that he will acquire it later on. You might say, what about you can't be makdavar shlo ba'olam? But here he is ba'olam because he's an embryo. He's inside his mother, but he's there. It's not a davar shlo. It's not like a fruit which hasn't grown yet at all. It's not even there. You're anticipating fruit. Here, there's a baby inside. So Rav Nachman says that when it's born, you can give it to him now, so that he will get it when he's born. Rav Huna is the most machmir. He says no. Even when it's born, if you can't give it to him now, you can't give it to him for when he will be born later on. Rav Sheshes says, no, you could be acquired. Now, I'm going to explain that these ideas, can you acquire it or not? What does the Torah say? It's really, I think, based on the concept of how do you make any kinyan, as we said many times. You can't just come over and take my wallet and say it's yours. You picked it up, you make a kinyan. No, it has to be with my consent. It depends on my willingness to give it to you or to sell it to you, right? The same thing. You have that when you acquire it, you have to want to acquire it, and you have to have in mind that this could be a good acquisition. So even if you want to give it to an unborn child, what's the idea? Can't be makdavar shelo ba'olam. It's not here yet, so your mind isn't really on the apple that hasn't grown yet at all. And the same thing here, when you mezakal over the concept here, we have machlokas, Rav Nachman, Rav Huna, and Rav Sheshes. Sheshes said you could do it. Question is, what's in your mind? Do you really think you're giving it to an uber? Yes, there's a baby inside. I'm giving it to her. Rav Sheshes says, yeah, I could acquire something or give something via somebody else. Please acquire this for the unborn baby because the baby's around. That's your feeling. Rav Huna says, no. Pardon?
The baby doesn't know what it is.
The baby doesn't have to know. Doesn't have to know. You can
say that you have to. Has to have two.
Right. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be. That could be that but I want to give it to you. I can give it, let's say, to a baby who's born. There's no question. Everybody agrees. If there's a baby around, the baby doesn't know what's going on, but you can give it to him or be mezaka through somebody else. Not necessarily he's not acquiring it, but somebody else is acquiring it on his behalf. That's when mezaka a little bit. Not that you're giving it directly to him. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't have a mind, but you're giving it to a third person, the mother or whoever, on behalf of him, and the other person does have a mind, so they could acquire it. I'm giving it, and he's receiving it. The question is, can you in your mind, can you really be giving it to somebody who's not here yet? Rav Sheshes says, well, he's here, he's in the mother's womb. You could give it to him. Rav Nachman says, can't give it to him now, but you can give it to him so that he'll acquire it later on. That could work. Rav Huna says, no, it doesn't work at all, because your mind is not, you're really not thinking of giving it to him. You're thinking of giving it to him, but you don't really have a full 100% acquisition in mind. That's Rav Sheshes' opinion. Now, we're going to deal with Rav Sheshes. The halacha is not like Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says you can give it hamazaka uber. You're giving it to somebody, to a third person, let's say, so that he should acquire it for the uber. Rav Sheshes says does work. I'm Rav Sheshes in the 6th line on Kuf Mem Beis Amraf. I'm Rav Sheshes, but how do I know this? The time we listen to this case, Ger. We're talking about a Ger. Usually, we're talking about a Ger who didn't have children yet. So he was Megayer, so he has no heirs. Shemeis, he died. So people went and grabbed whatever they could. He has no heirs. Just it's hefker. Ubizbizu Yisrael Nechasav. The various Jews went and they plundered all his assets and took them. But Shamu, then they heard afterwards, Sheish Lo Ben. Afterwards, they heard, wait, he had a son, meaning he had a son after he converted. He had a son. They heard there was a son. We didn't know. Or his wife was pregnant. Chayav and Lachsa, they got to give it back. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that they got to give it back because even if the wife was pregnant, the Uber inherited it, right? The Uber inherited it, even though he wasn't born yet, but he's a potential heir. Let's say zero hakol. Let's say they returned everything. After they returned it to the family, to Mrs. Gare, to the mother, whatever they returned it there, they heard then he died. His only son that he had, that he was either the son was there at the time that they had tried to plunder the assets, or he was born afterwards. The son died, or the wife who may have been pregnant, they heard after she was pregnant and she miscarried, so there were no heirs. Then another group, let's say the same group or another group, came and acquired the assets. In other words, the first assets they didn't get, right? Now the second group kana. But the first group didn't acquire. This is we're going to try to prove that an Uber is kana. If you say that Uber is not kana, why did the second group have to come and acquire it? The first group already acquired it. In other words, yes, if there was a son, fine. If their son was there at the time, that we understand. But you say in the second case, they first took the stuff of the ger. Oh, the ger died, they took his stuff. Then they heard that his wife was pregnant. Okay, heard his wife was pregnant, so they returned it. Then they heard that the wife did not carry the baby to term. She miscarried. So a second group came and took it. But the first group didn't acquire it. If an Uber is not acquire it, the first group could have had it. Why? Because when they acquired it, the mother was pregnant, right? Oh, she's pregnant, we better return it. Then the mother never had the baby. The mother miscarried. If you say though, so if the mother never had the baby and the Uber never acquired it, what did the second group have? The first group could have kept it because they acquired it. The Uber didn't acquire it. The Uber couldn't get it. And even if he died, right? He died now, but the point was when they took it, she was pregnant. And therefore, apparently he acquired it. The baby acquired it. Now, when he died, somebody can go and reacquire because their first acquisition didn't mean anything. What does the second group have to come for? They already acquired it first time. Sounds like it's the first group, but the point is they had to make a second acquisition, or if it's one group and another group, the second group would get it, not the first group. Well, if you say, in other words, here's a proof that the Uber did acquire it, that Uber does make an acquisition. Why? Because you say that the ones who acquired it when the Uber was still viable didn't get it. Only the second time, the second group, or the second time they came and made a kinyan, that worked, not the first one. So here's a proof that an Uber does kaya. So Rav Sheshes says, Rav Sheshes is bringing a proof to his opinion that you could acquire something for an Uber, whether while he's an Uber or for when he's born. So that's a proof that Rav Sheshes. I'm Rabbi, it's no proof. Like we said yesterday, we tried to prove from Rabbi Yossi. Remember, Rabbi Yossi said that an Uber is posel ve'en a machil. If a Kohen dies and he left his wife pregnant, even if there are other children, but the Uber is a zar, and therefore he can't give. He owns it as zar, the owner of a zar. The zar is the owner of the truma. He can't give food to eat. Children could give kohanim, but they're not. Now the question is, how is he kohen? It's mashma. He is kohen. So Gemara says no. Yerusha haba me'el shiny. You can't give something to a baby. You can't give something to an embryo. Let's call it an embryo. You can't give something to an embryo, even a third person. But if it's a Yerusha happens from God automatically. So Yerusha happens. So here too, you could say here the ger died. He left a wife that was pregnant. So the embryo acquires it because he's the heir. He's the only heir, and it's automatic. That's why the first group who tried to make an acquisition, or the first time that group, if it's one group, the first time they made an acquisition was meaningless because the baby acquired it. The embryo acquired it. If the embryo died then and never was born, then they made a second kinyan. That's Abaye's answer. So the Abaye says Yerusha is different. Rava says no, it's not that Yerusha is different. Shiny Hossam, the Ripam Rabbi they be Korah. Originally, when they took it, they weren't sure. They weren't sure. Baby gonna live, not baby gonna live. They didn't know, right? And then they heard the baby. So they themselves were misupak, says Rishban. The Masafkalu im yesh lo yorshama. In other words, they heard the ger died. First, go grab it. Then we'll go to court. We'll find out if he had any heirs or not. First thing is make your case to grab the stuff. They weren't sure. That's why the first group didn't acquire, because they didn't really make a good kinyan anyway. Because they only said we're going to grab it, but we're not really sure if we're making a kinyan. Again, it depends on what's in your mind. Are you really getting a kinyan or not? My ben, what's these two reasons? They heard originally that he died, but he didn't die. And then he died. So Rashbam says like this. Rashbam has a whole arichas, and then he says, "B'ksara iki benayu." Rashbam, the Divrei Masel is lashon ktsara. It's after the two dots. It's about 15 lines from the bottom of the page. Lashon ktsara iki benayu. Shishama shmeisa uber. They heard that they made a chazaka. Why? The father died. The ger died. Then they heard that the baby died, or that the embryo died, and then they made a chazaka. But he didn't really die at that time. He died afterwards. In other words, he didn't die. And other people came to Mechzak, second group. According to Rava, it's not weak because when they made the kinyan originally, they thought they were really getting it. They thought the kid was dead. In other words, according to Rava, it depends on the psychology of the people making the acquisition, the group taking the stuff. When they thought he was really dead, they thought, yeah, there's no heir, so we're taking it for sure. They already died, but point to Abaya, the second group acquired it, right? The second, according to Rava, the first group acquired, because when they made the kinyan, they thought the kid was dead. According to Abaye, who says what? That an uber is different, that an uber could acquire because a yoresh is different. Yerusha Abam Eila does work. So when they made the first kinyan and the kid was still there, the embryo was still viable at that point, you couldn't make a kinyan because the kid inherited. And only after he died, then the second group made it. So there'd be a difference over here. Either way, Rav Sheshes' proof that Mazakul Uber Kana is not really so strong, either because that's the Yerusha is different, or because in this case, it's not that the Mazakul Uber Kana, it says that the reason why the Uber didn't acquire it, the reason why the first group had to did not make a proper kinyan because they didn't really think they were acquiring it anyway. That's why he says over here the second group makes a kinyan, not the first group, because the first group thought they weren't sure whether they were making a kinyan or not. Therefore, that's why the second group got it, because the first group wasn't sure. According to Abaya, the reason is because Yerusha B'Me'elav, Yerusha comes automatically from Hashem. That's why it worked over here. But normally, Abaya and Rav are both saying basically that Mazakal Uber is not Kana. But over here it's different, either because of Yerusha or because the first group didn't really want to make a kinyan. They weren't sure if they're making a kinyan.
According to Rav, a gift and Yerusha would be the same?
Yes, there would be no difference, right? Doesn't make any difference. Gift Yerusha would, now this doesn't work because of Yerusha. It doesn't work because Yerusha works automatically. It works because of this. It doesn't work low kana. Correct. That's what Rashbam says in the first of the wide lines. It doesn't work at all. Doesn't work at all. Yeah, Gifton, that's exactly what, right. That's you. Rashbam is exactly answering your question. Tashma, we're going to try to bring another proof that are we going to, again, Rav Sheshes claims the Mazakul Uber is Kana. Rav Huna says it's not Kana at all. And Rav Nachman says, well, it works after he died. But the point is the difference does Mazakul Uber work or not? So Rav Sheshes says it does work. He tried to prove it from this case of the ger who died, and it's not a strong proof. Of Abayim Rav both give answers. Toshma, we're going to get kasha on Rav Sheshes from this case. Listen to this. Hinik ben Yom Echad. A baby who's born, who's 1 day old, nochel, can get an inheritance. 1 day old. Umanchil, and he can give the inheritance to somebody else. What does that mean? That if he inherits something, and then he dies. Manchil means he can give it, even if he's 1 day old. That means he inherited something, or he manchil, or he can give it to some other people. Now he can't have children if he's 1 day old, but he can give it to his brothers, let's say. Now, what nafkamina does that make? If he's one of many brothers and he gets a Yerusha, but if he dies right away anyway, it's going to go to the brothers anyway, right? If he dies or if he didn't get it to an inheritance, so we'll see. But the point is, he says if he's 1 day old, he gets some. He can receive he can be an heir, and he could bequest. He could give a bequest. He can bequeath. Ben Yom Echadein Uberlo. Oh, he says Ben Yom Echad. Not if he's an Uber. Smash that Uber does not acquire. This is a proof against Rav Sheshes. Says he's got to be a day old. If he's an Uber, he can't get a nachla. Rav Sheshes, no, that's different. Lolam, I'll tell you, pardon? No. If he's an Uber, no, it says Tinok ben Yom Echad. If he's a baby, 1 day old, he can receive and he could give a nachla. Ben Yom Echad and Uber lo. Uber means unborn, embryo. It's like if he hasn't come out yet into the world, he's an Uber. But it says if he's 1 day old, he can get a Yerusha. Okay, if he's 1 day old, but not if he's an Uber. You said an Uber could get a Yerusha, could receive things. Again, making no difference between Yerusha and a gift. Right? Even if he's an Uber, he can't get a Yerusha. Rav Shapiro says no. The truth is he could get a Yerusha. Rav Shapiro will maintain he could get a Yerusha. But over here, what are we speaking about over here? Listen to this case carefully. We're going to give an example. Rashbam gives an example from our ancestors. Rachel had a little baby, Yosef, right? Rachel had a baby, Yosef, right? Yosef had other brothers like Reuben and Shimon, but they didn't have the same mother, right? So let's say Rachel died and Yosef inherited her, okay? 10 minutes later, Yosef died. Who gets the inheritance? He had no children, let's say. He was a baby, right? Whatever, he was a baby. Rachel died. She inherited some assets to her children, assuming she didn't have a husband at the time, right? Just an example. So it goes to her children, her son. He's her son. Yosef is her son. Now he dies. Who does it go to? To Reuben and Shimon. Okay, now, so that's legitimate, even though it doesn't seem nice, but that's legitimate, right? If there wasn't the Ksubas ben Indifferent and all these other things, right? But goes to his brothers. It's not even talking about. Pardon? That's right. But the mother does, right? That's a different mother. That's correct. But over here, Yosef inherited something from his mother, Rachel. Then he died. It goes to all his brothers. Yerusha goes according to the Yerusha of the brothers of the father. So it goes to Reuben and Shimon. Okay. So there he means this. If he's 1 day old, yes, he gets the Yerusha, even, Rav Shapiro will say, even if he's an Uber, he gets the Yerusha. But over here, in order to get the ability to receive a Yerusha from his mother, it's from his mother, and give it to his brothers from his father's side, from his father's side, he has to have been a day old. Meaning, if he wasn't born yet, he can't. Let's say Yosef predeceased his mother. He died before his mother. And then his mother died. Then it would not work. He cannot inherit his mother born when he's dead already in the kever. He can't inherit from his mother to give to his brothers after he's dead. Can't inherit after he's dead. If he's alive, yeah. His mother died. He was alive. Makes a difference if he was alive, if he was 1 day old, if he was 50 years old. He inherits from his mother. And then if he dies, it goes to his heirs. If he was 50, he might have had children, but let's say he was a day old. He didn't have any children yet, obviously, so it goes to his brothers. That's what it means over here. When we say nochel lemanchil, means a specific case. Nochel benichseim, he can inherit from his mother, lahanchil lachan to give to his brothers, Reuben and Shimon. V'tafke ben yom echad, only if he's yom echad. In other words, Rav Shapiro will say, yes, an Uber could acquire, whether it's a nachla or it's a gift, he could acquire, yeah. But he can't acquire something when he's an Uber from his mother to give it to his father, to give it to his brothers. My time. You know why? To my inspiration. Because when an Uber dies, he dies before his mother. When a mother dies in childbirth, listen to this, when a mother dies in childbirth, according to this opinion, the baby dies first and then the mother. To my inspiration, he dies first. He can't inherit, and since he was dead before, and then his mother died, if he died a split second before his mother, we're going to talk about these cases later on in this parak, in the next parak, about cases where, a house fell down, and a father and a mother and a son were both killed. Who died first? Well, it makes a difference. If the mother died first, the son would inherit the mother, and then he would go to his heirs, right? If the son died first, then he didn't inherit from the mother. So here too, when a mother dies in childbirth, when a mother dies in childbirth, the baby dies with the humai inspiration. In other words, just like we said before, also Rashbam brings down, a husband inherits from his wife, right? That's what we said. What happens if the husband died? Can he inherit from his wife then and give it to his boys? No. He inherits from his wife if he survives her. The same way, a son can inherit from his mother after he's dead, but not to give it to his brothers. After, right? He can't inherit when he's dead already. If he's died before his mother, he can't inherit from her to go to his fathers. That's the point over here. We say if he's 1 day old, he can get an inheritance, give it. If he was born, if his mother died first and then he died, he was born first, A day later, his mother died, not in childbirth, she died later on. So he inherits from his mother. And then if he died, we go to his brothers legitimately. But if he died before his mother, he can't inherit in the kever to give to his brothers from his father's side. But normally, could he inherit when he's dead? Yeah, he could inherit when he's dead. In other words, an uber could not when he's dead, when he's not born yet. That's what we say. He has to be a day old. He has to be a day old to inherit from his mother to give to his brothers. He has to be a day old for that. If he's an uber, he can't do that. But if he's an uber, he could inherit. He could inherit from his mother. He could inherit from his father. But he can't inherit. He can't inherit from them to give to his brothers. And that he's not able to do. Just like a husband cannot inherit from his wife to give to his other heirs if he died before the wife. Says the that means, are you saying that when a mother dies in childbirth and the baby dies with it too, that the baby always dies first? We know there was a case where the mother had died, and the baby was still convulsing, was still moving around. That's like the tail of a lizard that after you cut off the tail, it's still vibrating around, it's still shaking around. I remember when I was in Boy Scout camp, when I was 10 years old, they would take an axe and chop a Danny Longlegs in two and then see the parts, run around. That's what these animals did. Anyway, the point is that when we say, so Rav Sheshes defends his position. He says, no, a baby could inherit. A baby, an embryo rather, I should be more careful. An embryo can inherit from his father, but he cannot inherit from his mother, right? In the kever, he's got to be a death. He's an embryo. He cannot inherit from his mother to give to his brothers. And that's the point over here. If he's an uber, no, my time, because if his mother dies then, while he's an embryo, he died first. And therefore, if he was a day old and then his mother died, then we'd get it. Then we'd get, otherwise not. So that's how he answers this question. Marbreg Rav Yosef, Ishmael Rav Amar, Lomer, no. I'll tell you what, when he say over here, they has to be a day old to inherit. That's for a different reason. He only if he's a day old does he diminish the share of the Bechor. I'm going to explain this outside first. Rosh Bams gave an example back in Kuf Chaf Zayin. I like his example there better than this example. Here's a case. Forget the wife now. We're talking about he has to be a day old in this case. A very simple case. You have Reuven and Shimon, two brothers. Reuven's a Bechor. Shimon is a Pashut, right? He's his younger brother. And the father left $9. That was his, and he also left a wife that was pregnant, but he left $9. Now when there's two brothers, Reuven and Shimon, and there's $9, how does it get divided up? The Bechor gets six, right? Let's say 6 and 3, right? Why? What's the chelik of the Bechor? 3. In other words, whenever you figure out a Bechor, you take one more share than the number of children. In this case, there are 2 children, so you figure 3 shares. There's 3 shares, $3. The Bechor gets his share, $3. Then a baby was born after the father died. The father died, left $9. Reuven would get 6, and Shimon would get 3 if everything else being if there were other children. However, there was another child. He was on the way. After he died, before the funeral, the mother gave birth. Mother gave birth to a baby. That baby does not diminish the share of the Bechor. How much is the share of Bechor? 3. 3. So the Bechor gets his 3. Now there's a baby. Now how many children are there? 3. So they're going to take the remaining 6 and divide it 2, 2, and 2. Reuben will wind up with how much? 5. And the other boys will wind up with 2 and 2. Let's say the baby then died. He relinquished his share, his amount of 2. And then Reuben would wind up with 6 and Shimon would wind up with 3 the way it was originally. Okay. That's the case over here. That's what we mean to say. That only works if the baby was born. In other words, the baby was born, meaning when does he diminish the share? No chilaman chil. When does he take, when you figure, if he was born before the father died. Before the father died, if there were 3 brothers, right, 3 brothers, it would be divided up differently. We'd figure 4 shares and start with the percentages, right? It would be different. That's why Rashbam gives an example over here. Because if there were 3, it would have been divided up differently with the Bechor. I mean, it gives an example. Here, Rashbam gives an example. It was $12, whatever. The way, however the math works out. So Ravi says, when we say a son is a baby 1 day old, it can inherit and can also bequeath, that means to say that if he's a day old before his father died, then he diminishes the share of the Bechor. The Bechor would not, in our example, the Bechor would not get, the share would not be 3, it would be 9 divided by 4. So it would be less than 3, right? That would be. The Omer doesn't my time. What's the reason for it? Because V'yoldu banav avano. So right, it says V'yoldu. They have to be born. If they were born before the father died, then he would diminish the share of the Bechor. Right? If the baby's born after the father died, he doesn't diminish the share of Bechor like in my time. He's not here. And that's what Nochel Manchil. In other words, Nochel Manchil does not mean that he doesn't get a Yerusha. It just means that he doesn't diminish the share of the Bechor if he's born, if he's not born yet when the father dies, if he's still an embryo when the father dies. Now that's how that's how they learned the case in Surah in the name of Marbre Reb Yosef, that a baby born after the father died does not decrease the share of the Bechor. But Padisa Masnoch, this is what they said in Pumbedisa, a different version of what Marbre Reb Yosef said. A Bechor, not talking about a child, not Levi over here was born after Reuven and Shimon were already born, and now Levi died, and now Levi was born afterwards. He doesn't diminish his share. They learn it differently, that a Bechor himself is born. Let's say the Bechor is born after the father died, right? Bechor has died. Now you might say, if the Bechor is born after the father died, who is he splitting it with? Is that what you're asking? Twins. You can talk about Rashbam says either twins or the man had multiple wives, right? So he, right? That you could say the father died, but he had several wives who were pregnant at the time. So he's saying a Bechor is born after his father died does not get a double share. My time, Yakir Machmanaki as a Bechor Benas. Oh, Yakir recognize doesn't mean you have to actually recognize him, because over here when the baby wasn't born yet, he certainly didn't recognize him, but he had to have the ability to. I mean, the father could die when the baby a day after the baby was born, and he doesn't really know him that well either yet. Right? Both of them. All these Lashonis, whether it's a Bechor born after his father died, doesn't get a double share, or a baby born after the father died does not diminish the share of the Bechor. Now we're going to psak halacha. Rabbi Yochanan was the Mardas in Eretz Yisrael. Hamazakar below kana, like Rav Huna, right? Doesn't say you can't acquire from it. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said, I'm going to give 100 to a boy. If it's a boy, I'm going to give 200 to a girl. So how does that work? A man is more generous with his own son. It's one thing if I'm giving some money to Yankel's unborn baby. I don't know. My head isn't really into it. It doesn't really matter. But if my own child, a person's own child, so we said 2 reasons in the Mishnah. One is because it's a shchib merah. A man's a shchib merah. He really wants to give it away, and we don't want to mess him up. We don't want to get him confused and possibly hasten his death. So we say it's a special dispensation to a shchib merah that what he says works even if it's an uber. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the reason why it works in our mission is because he's giving it to his own son. So we say, if I'm giving it to somebody else's embryo, that doesn't work. If I'm giving it to somebody else's father or mother on behalf of the embryo, that doesn't work because your mind's really not into it. But if it's his own son, it does work. Shmuel said, he wants to paskin upuk. We go out, I said, like bringing 10 people. He didn't like Rabbi Yochanan's psak. And I will tell you in front of them, he agrees with the Rav Sheshes. So we see it's a big dispute whether Mazakul is kana or not. The Gemara paskins like Rabbi Yochanan, Mazakul lo kana. Okay. This is a new case. A man said to his wife, just getting married, and I'd like to give a special gift besides my Yerusha. All the children that I'm going to have for you, let's say, they're going to be bar mitzvah, I'm going to give them a nice gift. All the children that I'm going to have from you, they're not yet. She's not pregnant yet. They're just getting married now. He says, I'm going to give them all special gifts. Does that work? No. So he says, all the children I'm going to have from you, I'm going to give them all special gifts, besides the Yerusha. He had an older teenage son from another marriage. What about me? So you're giving it to the new wife. The new wife, you promised all your kids are going to get nice gifts. She's not even pregnant yet. And the teenage kid from a previous marriage says, what about me? You can acquire like one of them, like one of the children, one of these children who are going to be born, you can have like them. They weren't acquired. Even according to the Shitas that say you can, that a Mzakulu B'Kana, that's only what? Or you say Mzakulu B'Kana if it's your own child, that's because she's pregnant already. Right? A father can give something to this unborn child. He's anticipating he already bought the cigars and he bestelled the bristle and the moil. He's anticipating all that. Baby's here. Rashbam says, take a look at Rashbam. Halfway down the wide lines. Look at that Rashbam. It's right halfway down the wide lines. There's a Karab Yochanan, right? It's not his son. His own wife, like we said, like Rabbi Yochanan explained away the Mishnah, right? Now, but now when he says, I'm giving it to my children who you're going to have in the future, she's not even pregnant yet. Hilkach lo kana, says Rashbam. A person thinks about his own son if she's pregnant. She's not even pregnant yet. Who knows what he's going to have? Maybe he's not even going to have sons. Maybe he's going to have girls. We don't know. We don't know the future. So now he told this teenage kid back in the Gemara, the teenage kid from a previous marriage, says, what about me? He says, you can have like one of them. But they're not getting anything, right? We just said that he can't give something to his children. Later on, he can give it to them when they're alive, or he's alive. But right now, you can't give something. The kids aren't here. It's a davar shel abal and b'chlal. Not even pregnant yet. He says, you can acquire with them. The dakati lesnu, they're not here. Hi, is the chelik l'talia b'makam b'nai? Does the son, though, have a special share? Latalia is like the young lad, the teenager. Does this guy have a share in place of the sons? Meaning, will he get a special share? Oh, let's say chelik l'talia b'makam b'nai. And Rashbam explains it this way. Let's say eventually she has 3 kids, right? She has 3 kids. And he says, I'm giving you a share. I'm giving you a matana, like one of them. So would you say, before the Yerusha, right? The kids can't get it because he gave it to him now. He didn't give it to him later on, right? Now they're not here yet, right? But will he get 1/4 of it as a gift, right? Will he acquire 1/4 of it as a gift because he's saying he gave it because he's alive, right? He's saying, I give it to you like one of them, but they're not going to get. So can he get 1/4? And then whatever remains after that gift, they will divide that 4 ways. Whatever remains of the 3/4 will divide it up 4 ways as a Yerusha when he dies. Is that what happened? We're talking about when he's alive. The Yerusha doesn't happen until he's dead. But will he get like 1/4 of the assets? Like, you can get like one of them. Let's say eventually he has 3 kids, right? And he didn't say anything in between. Will he get 1/4 of that as a gift? And then later on, when he dies, whatever's left, the 3/4 of his assets, if they didn't change, will divide them among 4 and not get. So we have machlokas here. Machlokas, will we get like anything? 3 against 3. Rav Avin, Rav Meir Shapiro, Rav Yirmiyah Damri, is cholik l'talia. You do give him a share. He gets a share in place of the sons. Right? When there's 3 sons, he'll get 1 share of that before the Yerusha, just as a gift. Rav Chanina, Rav Papi, Rav Yitzchak Nafla, these ones, Rav Papi, Rav Yitzchak Nafla, these 3 Rav Zamri, less a chelik, he doesn't get. He doesn't get a share, right? Amalei, Rav Yirmiyah, so Rav said to Rav Yirmiyah, Rav was one of the group who said that he doesn't get a share. Said to the Rav Yirmiyah, who said he does get a share, is a loch like us that he doesn't get a share. Also, is a loch like you that says that's Amalei Shita is like us that he does get a share. Why? The kashishna minaycha, we're older than you. And Nachas not like you. You're younger than us, so we pass him that he does get a share. Amalei Mida because the halacha depends on who's older and who's not older. What is it? What are you saying? You're older, therefore the halacha should be like you, not like us. Right, the time of telling Milsa depends on the reason. So Rav Yirmiyah said to who was it, to Rav Avu, the time of my. So what's your reasoning? What's your reasoning why he doesn't get a share? You're saying he doesn't get a share, but he was alive at the time. The father said you get a share like them. They're not getting Yerusha, right? My time. So he told him, go to Rav Avin. I explained this already, my view. I explained my view. I don't want to have a debate with you. I explained my view to Rav Avin. And he nodded his head. He agreed with me. I explained my reason why he doesn't get anything. He nodded to me in the base medrash. Notice he agreed with me. So Rav Yirmiyah then went to Rav Avin. Amalei, I'll tell you why. If he said, listen, I want you to acquire it like the donkey. I'm giving you a gift. How are you going to acquire it like the donkey's going to get it? Me, Kani, do you acquire? Digmar, Kani chamor, lo Kana. Doesn't work. I want you to acquire it like a chamor. A chamor can't make an acquisition. So you're getting it like him. I'm telling you, acquire it like those boys. Those boys can't acquire it based on what I said before. They were even, they were just a dream in somebody's head. They weren't even, they were just getting married now. There was nothing there. It doesn't work. And therefore he says it doesn't work. So that's what he says. Basically, we're coming out. The halacha is that you wouldn't get it, right? That's the question. He says you wouldn't get it. Then the Gemara goes on. Let's say he says, at the chamor. I'm giving you and the chamor should acquire it. Not you should acquire it like a chamor. Chamor can't acquire anything. Let's see you and the chamor. What happens there? So if Nachman Amar Kohen Machzor, you get half. You get half. You and the chamor. The chamor can't make an acquisition, but you can make an acquisition on your end. He says you and the chamor. Rav Nun Amar Lo Amar Klum. It's meaningless. You and the chamor. Sheish Amar Kohen Kol. You get everything. You and the chamor. The chamor can't get it. So again, a three-way machlokas about this kind of chamor. Amar Sheish Manam. How do I know that he gets everything? The time Rabbi Yossi Omer, the only bitter part of a cucumber is the inside part. So let's say you're giving a cucumber, one cucumber as truma on behalf of the other cucumbers. Since that part is bitter, when you give it truma, most valachitzon shabo, you add another one on the in addition to the outside of the cucumber which you're giving. You give another cucumber to make up for the inside of this cucumber, which is bitter. V'torem. Why does that work? At v'chamoru. How can that work? It's like you and the chamor, meaning the bitter part you can't give us truma. So at the chamor, if you say at the chamor doesn't work, well, how does this work? The Gemara says no, that's no proof. At the chamor maybe it doesn't work at all. Like possibly when you say at the chamor, Rav Nachman says you get half. Rav Nuna says you don't get anything. Maybe it doesn't work. Shani awesome. Midaraisa truma ma'isa. Even if you give the bitter part of the cucumber midaraisa, that's good truma. How do you know if you give truma from bad produce on good produce, the same species of fruits, whether it's apples or whether it's grain, whatever? How do you think it's bad good? We have this in many places in the Chas. You shouldn't get a sin when you give the truma. If it doesn't work, the siyas chet lami, why would you get a sin? Here you see that if you give truma from inferior produce on better produce, it's still a good truma. So the point is that Rav Sheshes cannot prove from there that at the chamor kani, because that's not a case about the chamor. A chamor can't acquire it all. So it could very well be maybe you get half, maybe you get nothing. Rav Sheshes says you get everything. From this case of truma, truma doesn't mean anything, because in case of truma, it is good truma. It's just not good, great truma, but you're a bad boy for giving bad truma, but it's still truma. It's not a case like chamor. But in any case, the proof that he brought, that he told Rav Avin, and he said is, I want you to acquire it like the chamor. Well, the chamor can't acquire it, so you don't acquire it either. And presumably here also, the teenager who said, "What about my share?" wouldn't get it either, because he said you would acquire it like them. They don't acquire it, so you don't acquire it. All right, we'll pick it up here tomorrow. Nice.